the first thing is, what problem are you trying to solve?
If we're not growing, you're not growing.
Hey guys, Nathan Rigney here, the Profit Generator, another podcast. Today we are talking with Bill Corbett from Stanley Black Decker, and you are the lead talent acquisition partner director of the company.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, so look, so much, Nathan. So an acquisition lead for Australia and New Zealand. It's actually a senior individual contributor role. So yes, I am the head for Australia and New Zealand, but I manage myself, which is a very difficult person to manage at times. Certainly, Dane.
So Bill actually is in our office, and he does work remotely from the Melbourne office, down here in Caringbara in my Shy Professional Connection office. And I guess the reason for the podcast, we're going to get into this in a second, but I was thinking that the start of 2026, being that you are an expert in finding talent, finding employees, as opposed to using that word recruitment, because it is about acquiring talented people.
So look, it's, I guess the general gist of it is, I remember hearing the term maybe for the first time about, 5-10 years ago. It was a case of one of those things I looked at and gone, what on earth is this about? This just sounds like a bit of a phase. But really what it is, recruitment is part of talent acquisition, but not the whole picture. Yeah. The idea is that you always are talking to talent, acquiring talent, and strategically building people in your network or within your employees' network that could be available to join your business, and not necessarily looking at it when a role comes up per se, but sometimes even tailoring a role for a specific person, assuming it obviously suits your business and is going to be relevant.
So being 2026, what we want to do is we want to talk about, start of January, let's talk about what businesses need to think about if they want to find new talent coming in. We're going to talk about some three simple steps, things to look out for, what you shouldn't do, so that you don't find yourself hiring someone that's going to leave you in a position where you're just going, I wish I didn't hire them. So my first question, Bill, I want to find a new employee. What are the basics of the 1, 2, 3s that you should be doing before you maybe reach out to, say, for example, a recruiter, or even if maybe you put your own Seek ad out there, or whatever you might be doing to try and find that next person?
Yeah, so look, I think the first thing is, when in terms of you talked about needing a new employee, the reason is why. So it's not necessarily as simple as I need an admin assistant or I need an accountant. What problem are you trying to solve? So you really need that defined straight up before you really do go to that next step, or otherwise you're going to end up with a role out there and possibly a person for a position that's not actually what you need, no matter how good they are.
Yeah.
So the focus really needs to be on defining what your problem is and what you're trying to solve, and then defining and putting it together a role based on that. Now, you also need it to be realistic. If your budget is $5,000 and you've got all the points for a $120,000 candidate, that's not realistic, and it's going to end in tears. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, actually, I think, let me just run this by you. And what I see a lot of businesses do is that they automatically go with, I'm going to hire someone young, so maybe someone that's in their 20s, or maybe they're starting out their career, and they think, I'm going to train them up, as opposed to maybe hiring someone that's going to be at a higher price, maybe?
Yeah.
When you look at the overall.
I think there's a few things to keep in mind as well, because I very much am just a number, because I know plenty of people of all sorts of backgrounds who the personality is really more important than the skill set. But looking at it from that perspective, it's like, let's say you want to take let's say, for example,
we've got a business, right?
Yeah.
We've got a business that is a tradie.
Sure.
We look at tradies or even like a real estate agent. I'm going to go find someone who's just out of high school, go and train them up. They're going to do an apprenticeship, going to do some sort of traineeship, as opposed to maybe, hey, look, I've got a void of jobs need to get done, hiring a fully fledged trained builder or maybe real estate agent.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I guess in terms of, like you said, hiring, say, a graduate or high school leaver or on an apprenticeship, you obviously are going to save a lot of money, and it is a really good way to build talent from the ground up. So you haven't acquired the talent, you've built the talent. But there are some things to keep in mind as well, depending on size. If you do hire an apprentice, a grad, whatever it may be, you need to dedicate that time to train them. You can't expect them to be performing at a
capacity of
5 years experience or whatever it may be. So that's really something that you need to keep in mind if you do want to do that. You're committed to
Yeah,
training.
and I guess you got to look at yourself as well. Like, going, what type of person am I? What am I like training someone else? Am I good at that? No. Maybe if you're not good at that, maybe you're better off getting someone else.
That's
for you.
correct.
Maybe someone who's a bit more qualified that's going to cost you a bit more in the end.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've also said as well to a lot of business owners is that the reason an employee is there is not to keep you company. It's not someone to go and have lunch with or to talk at the water cooler or when you're making a coffee. They're there to serve a job and actually bring forward an outcome, take an outcome,
correct.
right? So otherwise, you wouldn't employ them, right? You would just do the job yourself and you would keep the money yourself. So they're there. So I guess my point is that there must be a return on the employee's time, what you're paying them for, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to hire someone who was more qualified, you would naturally expect that the return should be a whole lot higher.
That's correct. And so the other thing is as well, that comes back to finding the problem you're trying to solve and be quite clear what you actually need out of the person, and then that determines what you have in terms of a job brief, specification and whatnot, so that when you do get to that recruiting stage, you know exactly what you want and why, and the criteria is there for a reason, not just to tick a box.
So yeah, for me, I've always looked at it whenever I put a new job out there, we put together a position description and we really think about what is it that we need that person to do. And actually what I often say to a lot of business owners is, you know what, you want to look at the things that you're doing in your day-to-day, write them down, create a list of, I want to do that, or I need to do that, or I don't like that. Maybe that new employee should be then taking parts of those roles off you. Or maybe, like you said, go back to what problem are you solving?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where you look at it with the position description, that's, well and good, but you also need to work out roughly what the timing is on it, because you might put all that two and two together and it's a 15-hour-a-week job and you've gone to market for a 38-hour-a-week employee. So you obviously need to be careful there. But the other parties as well, when you're looking at some of the criteria for the role, which is where it comes in. Often people say, I'm 10 years experience here, this and this. It's, do you actually need that? If you say you need a degree, do you really for that job? Or are you just putting together a cookie cutter?
I think as well, like being also, when you're looking at that position and that person who's going to fill it, also being quite open-minded about it.
Yeah.
I look at my team, for example, and the best thing I ever did, for example, Sue in our office here, she's probably a bit more on that mature side of life, but she was the best thing ever. And I think a lot of people look at our older people, and I don't want to say that Sue's older. She might look at this and she might come in and give me look. But like, Sue has been one of the best employees that I've hired because she's dedicated to work. She wants to be here. This is part of her identity. And to say, for example, just take a day off, she doesn't do it lightly. No. And that doesn't mean that's always going to be the case with someone who is of an older age bracket.
No,
compared to, but it's that stereotype that if you go and hire a 20-something-year-old, that he's happened to be on a Monday.
Whereas in my generation, we just fronted up, hungover. But anyway.
I remember a guy that I used to work with, this is when I was in my 20s, our employer put in this program where he said, look, based on all your sick days, I think you get 8 a year. And he said, for every sick day you don't take throughout the year, I'll give you $100. Because we had one staff member in particular who was about my age that Mondays he wouldn't rock up. He had too many good times down at Norvy's on a Sunday evening. Is that something that you can do legally? It's kind of frowned upon. This is back in. This is 20
look,
years
there were
ago,
certain
right?
things, but it's one of those things in terms of legality. I don't know, but the idea is it incentivises turning up to work when you're not fit for work, which could potentially be dangerous, because then you're getting into people turning up who are not fit for work if there's an accident. Look, if they're going out all the time, that's
another story.
Yeah, but then it also is a risk, because if they're intoxicated in the workplace still.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
But the way even with my staff, you know what, if you're sick, go home. Or if something's happened in your life where maybe you've had a family member pass away, take that time off, because I don't want you not being 100% here. Because there's a lot of risk in that with our clients, that if you get something wrong, it's just not a financial aspect, but also that reputation risk as well.
Yeah. And look, I think the part of it is often people look at an employee, or even on themselves, taking a day off is bludgeoning, or taking an afternoon is this, or taking holidays during the year is frowned upon. But if you look at it from a productivity perspective, if you've got an employee that's well rested, engaged, gets their breaks, gets that downtime, gets to switch off at a reasonable time, they're going to perform far better than not. I even look at how and I think most of us are in December, I can tell you my cognitive ability was probably significantly lower than it is now, just because there was no rest in that time.
So let's think about, so let's say, for example, we've found a few different employees, we've gone down this path of looking at find the right person. Next step, before we go and employ them, is there anything else we should do just to, for example, doing personality tests or just to see, because some people interview really well, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And but think about that interview process, and then just before you hire, like, what's a way to find out that, you know what, I thought they were great, but, you know, just that hidden piece?
Look, it depends on the exact role, right? But look, within our business, we generally will do a phone screen. There'll be a first interview, a second interview. There's usually a personality profile, and there's
different people along the journey each time.
From an interview perspective, it's usually, say, hiring manager and or, say, myself or a HR business partner. Second interview is usually then the one-up manager and then, say, someone from HR or perhaps, you know, someone else in the business that will interact with the role a lot. And the idea is that we try and do it so that if there's 2 interviews, for example, the candidate meets around within the business. So we've got that overall perspective. And I know depending on your size of your business, that may not be doable. But within the other side, we do there's personality profile. The way I look at it, it's a good guide, but don't rest your decision on it. So we often use in our business, we look at Myers-Briggs profiling. But if you are going to...
If I don't look at those reports, I understand that. Don't
bother doing it. Don't bother doing it if you're not going to...
I'm very big on who, not how.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, we've done our own recruitment and we spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
And I can just say, from the outside of anyone who's outside of recruitment or talent acquisition, it hurts paying those fees. Like there's this stigma around it. But
it hurts me too, because it means that I've had to outsource one of my roles.
But you can see that there are advantages in paying someone. Not that you're directly in that, I guess, that recruitment space. Being working for a big company, you're not there. But if recruiters who are selling their service, what are the benefits for someone who's watching to go, I should use a recruitment agent or a talent acquisition agent to find that staff member for me, and then getting over that hurdle of paying that fee?
So I think depending, I mean, look, that's how my career started. It was only 2019, so what's that, 6-7 years ago that I left that industry, so that was my job for many years. I think the idea of it, look, the most important thing is you're going back to that, what problem are you solving? So if you look at that, time generally is a big problem. The other thing is, if let's say you're, I don't know, like even myself, right, we sometimes outsource roles. We had a payroll position come up around Easter time last year. Not something we do every day. It was urgent. I wanted to get paid. So did everyone else. We went to an agency for that.
Who has experience in understanding payroll?
I don't know if they mostly do payroll. It's actually the company that owns MicroPay. They have an agency so they're a payroll tech system, etc., and also have a recruitment arm. So, for example, we just paid it because it saved us so much time, so much hassle, and so much risk if we were out of pay, short that role for X amount of time. So the thing is, I think, taking it back to everyday small business is, what is your cost in having that role vacant? Not that much, or it's not urgent, like sure, fine, whatever. But if you're looking at it and by doing it yourself, you end up with a vacancy that's open for 3 to 6 months, so you don't have that person in that role. Are you losing business? Are you not gaining business? What's the cost of having that role open? And when you look at it, depending on the recruiter that you choose, if they're either a specialist in that discipline, it can be just so much easier having that person partnership with there. And you're not necessarily paying for them to just give you a candidate. You're paying for all the months and years of work that they've put into that they can deliver that to you so fast. It's like anything. If you went to a doctor and, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something not disgusting, but let's say had something cut out, it might take them 15 minutes, but you're paying for all that years of study they've done. It's the same. Comparing us to doctors, I'm definitely not a doctor.
Who could do a better job cutting out an ingrown toenail? Me oh my, the doctor who's done a whole lot of time.
exactly.
You don't want your toe getting infected and falling off type
So
thing.
you're paying for that experience, that networking, and all that work that's gone on over the years, so that you do have that.
I think there's a lot of like psychology and growth around actually and understanding that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, and I've been through that journey where I've had to get past that idea that I need to bring someone else in it. It's what I'd call going into the zone of incompetence, right? Into a zone or a space where we don't have the skill set to carry out that task. So, for example, if something goes wrong with my computer, I could spend maybe 5 minutes having a look at it and see, but if I can't work it out in 5 minutes, the guarantee that I'll be there an hour later still trying to work it out, and then another hour mucking around, but I could have basically paid someone their hourly rate and worked for the next 2 hours and gained back that money.
It's what you say in many of your other videos and just day to day, Nathan, is if, let's say, take a small business owner and they're spending time on doing whatever service they provide, let's say they provide, and then instead they're chasing up debt and they need to hire someone, they're spending time hiring and not on their core business and not on revenue generating activity. Is that the best use of their time?
Yeah. So, all right, final question before we wrap up today. I want to know, okay, let's talk about finding you found your employee and you're all happy, they've passed all the tests. Let's talk about screening those calls with those who know, not testimonials. You talk about reference checks.
So look, to be honest, most recruiters agree with me. They don't think much. I think it's important that you have something in place, some sort of employment confirmation.
Is that because, like, when it comes to that, like, you make a phone call to find out about a particular person, they either know them or they're afraid to actually say the truth?
There's a combination of things. So you've got one, and they may be like really good friends with them. I mean, let's not even get into fraudulent references, but they did work with them a long time. I know, for example, I put some managers down I've worked for. They're going to give me a good reference because we're friends now. So it's not that reliable. I'm not complaining about those ones. You've also got the fact it's a subjective thing. Let's say I work for, accounting ABC, you want to hire me, you call my boss there. How do you know that the boss there is not a total moron? I'm sorry to put it bluntly, but why does their opinion actually matter? What if they're a narcissist? What if they, have a list of people that they've burnt over the years? Their opinion, you know nothing about this person and you're trusting their opinion. So it's like, why that? And the other parties, a lot of the questions are, can you give me an example of their strengths? It's once again subjective. So my thoughts are, I'm not saying that they're not important, but you need just solid empirical, not necessarily yes or no, but just factual data. So did they actually do this job? Yes. Did they work here then? Yes. Would you re-employ them? Yes or no? Why? That probably gives you everything you need to know. Anything after that just becomes subjective. Yeah, not really worth much, to be honest, apart from putting things a tick box. And the other parties as well, there's lots of cases now where people have given bad references and then they've had a lawsuit for it because it's been considered defamation. So do I think they're worth much? No, I think an employment confirmation, 100%, if there's some sort of qualification that they're required, a qualification check, 100%. But in terms of a reference with a previous employer, sure, you can do it, but you don't
Which
know.
is probably why the personality testing
is better.
Is quite... Because there's no spots to really hide in those tests, because I guess the person who's doing the test, unless they really understand the mechanics of it, are not going to be able to get themselves around to actually lying in it, as much as they may try.
That's it. So a reference check to me, or employment confirmation, it's just a due diligence to prove that they are who they say they are. I had one that came through from, actually it was a local recruitment agency based in the Shire, and it was someone I managed years ago, and there were 18 on this form to fill out, and I'm looking at it and they were like, can you give an example of when this person did this? And I'm like, this is all made up. No one can remember. Okay. Nice rant.
So I guess if you're looking at employing someone in this year coming up and you've got a position, it's really understanding what is it they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And then we said the next thing was probably even following up with a position description about what that person's going to do, trying to work out how many hours it is. That type of person, who is it? Whether you're going to go get someone who's really experienced in that space or someone who's a little less experienced. What's your budget on that? And then understanding what are the pros and cons. If you're going for someone who's less experienced, do you have time to spend with them to train them to where they need to be? Or if you're not, maybe you need to go for someone who
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like that return on that.
Yeah. We haven't even got into sourcing strategy on where we're going to find this person and
This is true.
that sort of thing.
Well, I think recruitment agents are quite a necessary evil.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's many different things. Like even where I work now, I still have a brief. I've recruited for them for 50 times, and I know the role. I still have a brief with them just to make sure that it is.
What about like one last question?
Yeah.
And I know you're going to be completely honest with us because you always are. You don't hide
Not necessarily
behind
on
the truth. Tell me, when these recruitment agents, do they give you the guarantee period? Guarantee period really worth what it is? And let me tell you what my thoughts are on this.
Okay.
Guarantee period basically says that, hey, I pay a fee for someone and it didn't work out in a time frame, and so what we're going to do is we're going to replace that person for it. Now I look at it and go, well, if I'm getting paid for an outcome, I've already said that outcome, and I'm not getting paid for another outcome, am I going to put as much effort into that? Are they going to put as much effort in it?
Yeah.
I get this feeling that the guarantee doesn't mean all that much.
Something that when I was agency, we were contractually obliged to provide, but it's supposed to be an absolute fail-safe. It's not supposed to be normal. It's supposed to be something terribly goes wrong.
I know in, say, for example, South Africa, they don't do any guarantees.
So, for instance, I'm actually not a fan of them because let's say if you look at the reason people leave a business, it's usually based on their manager, based on the role. So in terms of that side of things, how much of that is actually the recruiter's responsibility? If you put it into someone like who's never managed someone before, and then they don't manage them well, why should the recruiter pay? Why would the recruiter provide that?
So it could be a bit of column A, column B type. But I guess as well, if you look at the traditional recruitment fee, we've found someone, this is what they've said, how much, really they're just getting a referral fee for finding someone and having a talent acquisition pool.
The idea is that, as well, depending on the model used, you've got a lot of agencies that use retained search. So that's usually, I think, from memory, third on brief, a third on shortlist, a third on, whereas you've got the others where it's a fee based on percentage that's paid at the end. You generally are not going to get as much effort for that, particularly if you've engaged multiple ways, because then the percentage of filling that role drops. So let's say you've got marketing manager, you decide to go to 3 agents. The agencies always find out that they're going there. Their effort and interest drops because they've only got a 33.33% chance of filling that role.
Good maths.
Yeah, I can do fractions and percentages surprisingly. And then you look at it and you've also saturated the market, particularly if you're in an area like the Shire. You've got 3 agencies contacting the same candidate. So that ends up just putting a negative perception on your brand because it's, this company, why have they hired recruiters? I keep getting approached about it. They must be having trouble filling it. And then the other thing is as well, the recruiter who doesn't fill it, or the 2 recruiters who don't fill the role, they get paid zero. So when you do operate with agencies under that thing, you're actually paying for all the roles that were never filled and all the work done that were never filled because it's based on final stage. So,
Okay, I think there's some really good tips for anyone who's looking to get an employee. Bill, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bill Corbett, Talent Acquisition Lead, Australia, New Zealand.
All right, there you go. Bill Corbett, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Uncle
Bill.
Nay.